Hey everyone, today I'm talking with Dr. Jennefer Heisz about her new book, Move the Body, Heal the Mind. This is a great conversation about how wonderful your body is and how it is designed to help you heal mentally and physically. Pull up a chair and buckle up. It's the Original Strength Podcast. So, Dr. Heisz, you have your new book, Move the Body, Heal the Mind, coming out on March 8th. And it's a great job. I think you did a wonderful job of combining story with science through your experience and your research. But before we get into this, do you mind just giving our listeners just a little bit of background on what you do in your work with the NeuroFit Lab?
Sure. So I'm an associate professor at McMaster University, and I direct the NeuroFit Lab, where we study the effects of exercise on the brain to prevent to help manage mental health, prevent dementia, and keep you overall well, healthy and well.
Awesome. And in your book, speaking of mental health, my favorite chapter is it has to be mental health is physical health.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that one was just full of just great little tidbits and nuggets. Most of all, how any form and all forms of exercise and intensities are good for mental health.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really amazing when we look at the research on the benefits of exercise for depression. Most people think, the treatment of depression or the management of depression is, antidepressant pills. These are the best thing. But unfortunately, they don't work for 1 in 3 people who take them. They have this form of like drug-resistant depression where they take the pill and they don't have any symptom relief. They still feel depressed. And what's happening for these individuals is that the drug doesn't target the root cause of their depression, which in many cases is likely inflammation. And I talk about that in my book. This idea that inflammation can build up in the body from, sickness, illness, even psychological stress. And that can go to the brain and start to wreak havoc on the systems of the brain that regulate our emotions and our mood, including depression.
So if medication doesn't work for 33% of people, what do you what's the percentage of people that exercise or movement works for?
Yeah, so it turns out that for these individuals who have drug-resistant depression, most of them respond better to exercise. So there's been a few studies that compared. They took drug-resistant depression, people who are experiencing that, and they measured their inflammation at baseline and put them in an exercise program. And the ones who had the higher levels of inflammation at the beginning of the exercise program benefited the most. So basically, by the end of this exercise training session, over several weeks, they were free from their depressive symptoms just from exercising alone when they had been on a course of medication that did nothing for them. And so this is really amazing, right? And it's very helpful and promising for a lot of people who don't necessarily want to take medication but want to do things for themselves. And like I'll say that knowing and that medication is extremely transformative for many people, and many people need to take it. And for individuals who respond to antidepressant drugs and do get relief, there's a really nice added benefit of exercising with medication, like as an add-on therapy, because it helps not only reduce your side effects that you get from the drug, but also could even reduce your dosage that you need to feel good.
So even if the medication does work for you, exercise is still good and can even lower the amount of medication you need to take.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Have you found in your research, is there like a magic number or optimal dose of exercise?
Mm-hmm. Well, so it turns out I mean, not surprisingly, it depends on where you're starting, what your fitness level is. And this is this is true for physical health, right? You want to titrate and gradually increase the exercise
Ideally.
intensity and duration. Ideally. I mean, some of us just jump right in, right? But for mental health especially, it's sort of, we can start with baby steps, and each step counts. Each step, each workout has the power to improve our mood, to make us feel good, to relieve our anxiety, to reduce our stress. Every single workout does. Whether that's just like a 5 minute walk around the park, or a few jumping jacks, or something more intensive like a brisk walk or jog for 30 minutes. So the best evidence that so most studies have shown that 30-minute sessions a week of a moderate to vigorous intensity it seems to be really effective. And our research has shown that too. So moderate intensity, which in our study we use cycling. So it could be just cycling is typically moderate intensity, can be intense, of course, but at a moderate intensity, or it could be jogging, but cycling 3 times a week for 30 minutes was in our study was enough to buffer against stress-induced depression and anxiety. And so a lot of people think, depression, when we think of mental illness, we think, oh, you were born with it, or you're diagnosed with it, or it's some sort of genetic thing. But any of us can develop mental illness. And it has a lot to do with stress. Stress is a huge factor. And so stress-induced mental health issues can happen in anybody, even if you've never had a diagnosis before. And our research shows that we're seeing an uptick of this in the pandemic, especially with the uncertainty and the isolation. All of these things are causing so much stress for people that they're starting to cause symptoms of depression and anxiety in people who've never experienced them before. So there are these strange symptoms like tightness of chest. So my friend's father, he was suffering from this tightness of chest. He went to his doctor, and his doctor did all the physical tests. His heart was fine, no problem. Turns out he's just suffering from a little bit of anxiety and maybe some depression. And for him, he's like, 75 and never experienced this before. So it was such a strange feeling, but really it can happen to anybody.
No, especially, and it is neat that you brought up the pandemic, because I would imagine that the world is seeing such a much larger increase in mental health issues.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So right at the start of the pandemic, we wanted to just get the pulse of people. And so we sent out a survey to 1,600 people, asking them, how are they feeling, their mental health, but also how was their activity level? And so, I mean, stress was up, anxiety, depression were way up. Activity was down. The people who were able to maintain their activity level were faring better. And we saw this really interesting shift in what was motivating people to exercise. So people had shifted away from wanting to exercise to look good, and they moved towards wanting to exercise to feel good.
Mm.
But there was a little bit of we called it a mental health paradox, where people wanted to exercise for their mental health, but they were too stressed or anxious to do it. And they lacked the motivation, which is a symptom of depression. And so there's this, exercise is extremely beneficial for mental health, but there are these additional barriers that we have to keep in mind. And so because of that, I always recommend some is better than none. This is your mantra, don't try to go for gold, not every day at least, some days it's just some is better than none.
I was going to ask you about that, because if there is a paradox, and you want to feel good and you want to exercise to feel good, but you just can't make yourself do it, what's the best way to get started for that sum to start being better than none?
Yeah, well, it's a baby step, a baby step in the right direction. So, for me, whenever I'm feeling that way, and I still feel that way, even though I study research, I know the benefits of the science. It's still hard for me. I mean, it's a challenge. Some days I'm feeling too tired or stressed, or it's late in the day, and I'm just like, it would just be easier to sit here, right? So for me, I usually do a negotiation with myself where I say, okay, well, the plan today was to do, let's say, a 30-minute jog or a 30-minute run. let's just do a 30-minute walk. So I put in the time, but I take off the intensity. And so this could be a simple trick for others. But generally, what I do, which is backed by the science, is just really simple planning ahead. So put it in your calendar, block it off, include the details that you what you're going to do, when, where, with whom, get it all out there so that, the thing is, the brain is always trying to work against you. It doesn't want to expend all this extra energy to exercise. And so it wants us to be lazy. And so you need to have this plan so you can say to your lazy brain, no, we got time for this, no, it's not too hard. It's this program isn't that hard for today. So all these like a little bit of tricks to plan ahead. I always have like my workout bag ready to go, so I don't have to like find the stuff. Like there's I have my swim bag, I have my gym bag, and it's all at the front door. And so I just kind of grab and go. And so I guess the really nice thing about exercise is, yeah, it's hard to get started. There's that inertia, right? That biological inertia in the brain, the psychological inertia of just not wanting to do it. But once you start moving, the muscles release all of these neurochemicals that go to the brain and stimulate it and make it feel good. And so it just, once you start, it's easier to keep going. It's like that momentum.
I thought you did a great job in the book at providing getting started routines at the end of each chapter, whether it was for how to move to help with anxiety, or how to move to help get a better night's sleep, or to turn back the clock on your brain. Like each chapter you end with a fairly simple way to get started, but you also ramp it up too. Like you have progressions with it. So I think that was very nice.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, this was something I really wanted to do. I hadn't seen it before in any other book, and each workout, so it's like a weekly plan, something simple, and each chapter, yeah, builds in intensity and complexity. But the creative fun part of that was like I had to make the science into a workout. And so
Yes.
each workout's like totally inspired by the science. And I think, yeah, I was really proud of how that came together. And I think, it'll give people a place to start where they
Yes.
don't need any fancy equipment or any prior knowledge. And the photos at the back of the book will hopefully help too.
So speaking of making the science fit, what came first? This is like a chicken or the egg question, because
Mhm.
you have your work with the NeuroFit lab, but in the book, this is a lot of based off of your own experience.
Yeah.
And as far as your exercise journey and your mental health journey.
Hmm.
So what came first, the NeuroFit lab, or did they actually bloom and blossom together?
Yeah, they kind of bloomed and blossomed at the same time, but it was really brought on by my personal struggle. So I was in grad school, and my PhD was on really fundamental neuroscience. So how does the brain represent who we are as people, our memories, etc. And it became clear that something wasn't quite right with my own brain. I had some pretty severe anxiety, and I was at a bit of a loss with help from the medical community, and sort of on a whim, I borrowed a friend's rusty old road bike and was amazed at how good I felt. Like it really just soothed my mind, and I just kept riding, and that movement sparked not only just a shift in my personal life with a love of exercise, but also a shift in my professional life. And from that point forward, I really steered the course of my research to focus on the impact of exercise on the brain. So they bloomed and blossomed together, but it has been my own personal journey that's really propelled the research, and my reason for writing the book, I think, because I really understand the science, but I also know that there's a person experiencing this. And so we're talking together in our journey together, rather than me being an authority on the science talking at you. And I think I hope that resonates with people, because I really did try, I really poured my heart and soul into it and shared a lot of information that I really do hope is helpful.
No, well, if I could, a word I would use to describe, if I could just, if you held me down to one word, I would say hopeful. This is a very
Mm,
hopeful book, because it does highlight how the body can heal, and how if you just engage in your body's design and move, it kind of
mhm.
really knows how to take care of itself and fix a lot of issues.
Yeah, isn't that amazing? Isn't that reassuring?
It is.
Yeah. It's really like this self-healing body that if we give it what it needs with movement and nutrition and sleep, that it gives us this incredible life to live. Yeah.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly. So speaking of that, you got the research on how exercise can help with inflammation and issues like anxiety, depression, things like that, helping with. Is there any research on how maybe can exercise actually help stave off or prevent um, those type of issues as well?
Yeah, yeah. So like I was saying, I mean, we all experience stress in our life, right? Day-to-day stress. And the the it doesn't have to be a bad thing, but what happens is we overreact, or we react strongly to these stressors, and it's our reaction to those stressors that makes it really damaging to our health, not just physical health but mental health too. And so when we're really overreactive and moody, it starts to break down the body, break down the brain, and it's more difficult to be happy and healthy. And so one of the amazing things that exercise does is it effectively tones the stress system, so that we see a stressor in our environment, we get activated, like the body's stress system alerts us and we get prepared. But instead of like having it be overwhelming, we can exercise allows us to bring that stress response back down to baseline, so that we can like clearly look at the problem and solve it, rather than feel it tensely and overreact. And so this helps prevent onsets of stress induced depression and anxiety. It also helps to keep things like dementia at bay, for memory loss as we get older. The benefits of exercise for keeping the brain thriving, because the exercise that we do, it stimulates the muscles, stimulates all these neurochemicals. It really gives the brain the nutrients it needs to thrive, and that becomes especially important as we get older.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, because it seems like over the last few months, a really hot topic's been Alzheimer's, with some new
Mm-hmm.
drugs, controversial drugs, and expensive drugs that have come out.
Mm-hmm.
And if exercise could help with that, it's just, I don't know. Well, it is one, it's our design just to move, but it just seems like maybe a better solution than maybe, not that drugs are bad, but and they can be
No.
helpful. But there seems to be a lot of controversy around the Alzheimer's drugs.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, well, we've had such uh, failed attempts. There were two really promising drugs that one that targeted amyloid plaque, one that targeted tau, and neither worked. And it just took the wind out of the sail. But what a lot of people don't realize is that physical activity is the greatest lifestyle preventative tool for dementia. And in fact, our research shows that physical inactivity contributes to your dementia risk as much as your genetics.
Oh wow.
So we have this saying in the lab, you can't change your genes, but you can change your lifestyle. And especially around dementia, it's such a scary disease, or dysfunction of the brain, that just any glimmer of hope is helpful for this, for people who are worried about it.
That is awesome and powerful.
And powerful.
So, got to ask you, in the
Okay.
book, you share your journey as you became a triathlete superstar.
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, if you just doing one triathlete to me makes a person a superstar, because obviously they either don't have a car or a boat, or they do and they've decided they don't need it. So are you still able to compete, or are you looking for COVID to be over so you can compete?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, you're right. I mean, I did, so the book does follow my journey from newbie triathlete, so where I do a try, and then it ends with this full Ironman that unfortunately, well, I had to do solo because the pandemic canceled my race. So yeah, that was a bit epic. Yeah. But um I'm right now I'm just getting back into it. I think,
Okay.
it for me, COVID just like it killed the race. I had the not just the Ironman, but I had I had qualified for the world championship that was supposed to be in New Zealand. And I was like
Wow.
so excited. I know I have worked so hard to qualify. And it was supposed to be in November of 2020. So not only was my Ironman in August 2020 canceled, but my this qualifying race was. And it just, I don't know, took the wind out of my sail. So right now I'm going to the gym, lifting some weights, I'm doing my running, just some yoga. I'm trying to just rebuild my love of exercise again, because sometimes when you do something so intensive like that, it just, and then the world falls down. You just need a little bit of tender love and care to get your love back for exercising. And so that's where I'm at right now, but I haven't totally written off that I'll probably do another triathlon.
Well, I mean, already, like you have to know, like in your mind and your heart, you have to have this. I can do anything because before you got started, could you imagine you would even complete any
No,
triathlon and then you
no.
qualified to go to New Zealand?
I know. It was pretty mind-blowing actually. So yeah, no, it is amazing, and that's the beautiful thing about exercise is it teaches you that you're capable of far more than you could ever have imagined, right? And yeah, I was not an athlete. I was never an athlete. And then to be able to complete the most grueling one-day event in sport, just, I think it's a testament to the depth and strength of human capability.
Yeah, and I think it also highlights how exercise is really a personal resilience magnifier.
Mhm.
Like it builds
Oh
your
yeah.
resilience.
Oh yeah. It takes so much resilience to do, but it gives it all back and more. So you come out really strong, not just physically, but mentally too.
Right on. So, Move the Body, Heal the Mind comes out March 8th,
Yeah.
2022. If you could tell one thing to anybody listening about mental health or movement or exercise, like that, something like what they just really need to know, what would it be?
Something that they just need to know. Well, moving your body can really help get your mind unstuck, no matter what the situation is. Just take one step in that right direction for better physical health, better mental health. They really are one and the same.
Awesome. Dr. Heisz, thank you so much and congratulations on your new book.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Now get outside and play.